So how long is it since you left the White House?
It was 2 years ago.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So you've done a heck of a lot.
Well, yeah, I came to the government. Yeah, mic's on. Yep, mine is on. All right. I'll let you introduce. Oh,
Yeah, but
you want me to side by side? Okay.
Right.
All right.
Okay, everybody ready to go? Okay, welcome everyone to our, I think, final Science and Technology and Policy Leadership Seminar for the 2015-2016 year. And then, of course, we'll be ramping back up in the fall for next academic year. I'm Sanjay Raman. I'm the Associate Vice President for the National Capital Region and a Professor of Electrical and Computer Engineering. This talk is going to be very near and dear to my heart because I'm very interested in sensors and the Internet of Things and things of that nature. So we're really, really lucky to have with us today Sakwu Rhee. Dr. Rhee is the Associate Director of Cyber Physical Systems Program at NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technology in Gaithersburg.
Gaithersburg, yes.
He is also leading the Global City Teams Challenge program, which aims to create replicable and scalable models for collaboration and incubation of technology and Internet of Things systems. The goal is, of course, to improve the quality of life of our citizens in the emerging smart cities around the world. As you may know, various statistics say that on the order of 80% of the world's population is going to live in an urban area by 2050. So our ability to build efficient and high-quality urban systems is really important. So the GCTC program and Dr. Rhee's program at NIST are helping do that. He has a very, very distinguished record of achievement. He's one of MIT Technology Review's top innovators under 35. You're under 35?
It was. Oh, for a while back.
I'm definitely not under 35. One of Red Herring's top 5 innovators. He received his MS and PhD degrees in mechanical engineering from MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology. Doesn't give the dates.
I did not want to
reveal that information. So I'm very, very pleased to welcome Dr. Rhee. Thank you so much for coming.
Thanks, Sanjay. Thank you very much. Thanks, everyone, for coming. It is a little awkward, standing just right next to Sanjay and listening to my own bio being read and all that. So it was one of the best introductions I ever had. So thank you very much, especially the age part, 35 thing. And that was anyway. It's really pleasure and it's an honor to be here and to speak to all of you. I actually see a few very familiar faces already, so this is a good sign, which means. Either I'm doing my job properly and the audience is the right audience. So that's a good thing. So what I'm going to talk about today is about the Internet of Things and smart cities, and specifically a program called the Global City Teams Challenge. Okay, so, oh, by the way, it's like after 4:30 right now, so you guys may be a little tired. So probably part of my job should be waking you guys up constantly so that you guys do not fall asleep. Hopefully you don't. How many of you heard a term called the cyber physical systems? Raise your hands. All right, this is better than usual. Usually I only get few. I guess this is academic setting, so I guess cyber physical systems is better known than the other part of the world. Cyber physical systems is, you can kind of describe it many different ways, but I kind of say is an Internet of Things on steroid. So when I say on steroid, that means we put more effort on the security issues, reliability, and robustness issues of the IoT. So IoT is very much of a commercial term. I mean, you might got things, sensors, and sell them over like Fitbits type of things. When you say cyber physical systems, it's more about saving lives, okay? And how can you bet your life onto something, onto these devices? Cyber is connectivity, so it's like internet, and physical means the things. So IoT is not that different from CPS anyway. So I work as an associate director of a cyber physical system program at NIST, and my portfolio covers smart cities and IoT in general. So for those who are not familiar with the NIST, NIST is a part of the U.S. Department of Commerce. We are not an independent laboratory. We are part of the Commerce Department itself. So we are a federal agency itself, which is kind of different from many other government-sponsored labs that you are aware of. And also, we have about 3,000 employees, scientists and engineers full-time. And then we have about 2,800 associates and facility managers, users in general. So we have about 6,000 people in total scattered around between two locations, one in Gaithersburg in Maryland, the other one in Boulder, Colorado. We had 5 Nobel Prizes for the last 16 years. I believe that's a pretty good record, I guess. It's not too bad, right? I'm going to talk a little bit about IoT. So some of you may wonder, what is Internet of Things? Okay. So you may kind of start thinking about, so thermostats connected to my cell phone and microphones connected to my TV monitor, all that, connecting stuffs and connecting things. Yes, that's the concept. However, that's only a small part of it. Okay. The bottom line of Internet of Things is obviously there's a hardware. In the bottom, there's a hardware layer, chips and radios and sensors and actuators and even cars and even airplanes, anything that you can think of. And on top of that, there's this communications layer, meaning that you need to connect them. Wi-Fi, Zigbee, and Z-Wave, and cell network, and LoRa, anything that you can think of to connect these devices. Now, that's only half of the equation. The other half of the equation, which is probably more important, is data analytics and service on top of it. So let me ask you one question. You've probably heard that people say data is new currency. Have you heard that? Okay, that's good. Meaning data is important, is valuable. I only agree with it. I only agree with only half of what they say because data itself is only ones and zeros. Okay, ones and zeros. That doesn't really have any value. The value is created when you actually extract useful, actionable information out of that tons of ones and zeros, and then take action based on it. That's when the value is created. The reason I bring it up is a lot of city officials agree with it because they always see the tons of data with Excel spreadsheet, full of numbers, and they say, that's a currency. How do I monetize it? That's the next question. That's when you have to extract real information out of it. That's where the value is. So this data analytics layer is exactly the layer that does that. So through collecting all this data from the bottom two layers and extract useful information. On top of that, there is the most important layer called the service layer. So let's say you have this information. If you do not do anything with it, just sit on the tons of information, there's no value created. You gotta take action. You gotta make a decision. Before you take action, you gotta make a decision and take action based on it. And that decision could be made by machine or it could be made by human. All right, so that's where what you call human in the loop is important. So when you talk about IoT, we sometimes think that IoT is just about devices. Why do I have to care about it? Because you are part of the loop. Okay, that's you are part of the system. That's why you have to care about IoT. So in business world, okay, the value increases as you go to upstairs. Okay, so when you sell chips, yeah, you're gonna make a lot of more money. You're gonna make money out of selling chips, that's for sure. However, think about what kind of new service what kind of revenue or what kind of new business opportunities can be generated out of using this data. It's enormous, okay? That's where the focus of a lot of companies today are. So you can kind of see this is as a like value chain. From the bottom to the top, you can see more value is created going through. So once you apply this IoT to smart cities, apply it to public sector, it becomes a smart city, okay? Now, when I say smart city, by the way, we have to remember I'm not just talking about the cities, okay? I'm not just talking about large metropolitan cities. Yes, we include them, but there are smaller cities and towns and neighbors and communities. So those are anything that any kind of group or region that we call it sometimes local governments or region or communities. So it includes larger cities but small towns as well. So what is the definition of a smart city? We obviously can define it in many different ways. This is the way we define it as use smart technologies such as IoT and CPS to improve the quality of life in city and communities. Now, here's the important part. If you stick to this definition, suddenly the scope and range of smart city solutions become enormously bigger than before. So, traditional definition of smart city projects is something like cities have a budget, they come up with a big budget, they send out RFP, request for proposal, and companies respond to it and they do their IT system upgrade or put some kind of new visualization tools and all that. That was kind of like traditional definition of smart city projects. But if you use this type of definition, suddenly the scope becomes a lot bigger. Car sharing services, for example. Is it a smart city project? Does it help the city? Does it improve the quality of life? Well, it's debatable, but a lot of people, the answer is yes. So if it is yes, but they don't necessarily work with the city government. I mean, they work with the government, but they do not have city as a major customer. They get revenue from the residents and citizens by providing service to improve their quality of life, not necessarily getting paid by the city itself. So suddenly, the smart city projects and smart city concept becomes a lot broader than before. However, there is a big problem. And, well, there are many problems, obviously, but there is a couple of very important problems. One problem is the one-off nature of most of these projects. So this is how it works, typically. When a mayor suddenly thinks that, I want to make my city smart, then the first thing he does is he kind of calls an expert and say, I want to make my city smart, and what do I do? And suddenly they send out a call for information, a call for proposal, and they call in experts, and they do analysis of the city, come up with tons of recommendations, and then come up with a completely custom tailored solution to address the problem the city has, okay? The next city, probably only like 50 miles away, suddenly that city also wants to make their city smart. Exactly the same thing happens again. They come up with a completely custom solutions. They come up with a very complicated requirement document that only custom tailored solution can address. Problem with this picture is that neither vendors nor cities are happy, because vendors are not happy because they cannot sell the product over and over again. Cities are not happy because they have to reproduce or reinvent the wheel over and over again. So this is not working, okay? There are 19,000 cities in the United States alone, 19,000 cities. Not many of them can afford to go through this complicated process of spending millions of dollars upfront just to get to the point that they can start working on smart city projects, okay? So we need a different approach. We need a different approach. Second problem is a lack of measurability. So the funny thing, I was talking to the mayor the other day, one of the city's mayor, and then I told him, like, oh, okay, so what do you want as a mayor? And what is the biggest thing you want? Says, the first response he says is, my city is unique. So don't try to say that, my city is not unique. It's the best in the world and unique. Okay, get it. What is our second question? Second question, oh, by the way, what does other cities, what are they doing to improve their quality of life? I want to hear about it. I want to kind of see what they're doing. And so here's a little bit of a contradictory statement. They say they're unique, so they have to have a unique solution. But at the same time, they do not want to adopt a solution which is not tested in other cities. All right? So the point is, at the political angle, everything can be unique. Everything should be unique in their city. But at the technology level, which we are focusing on right now, it doesn't need to be unique. They don't have to reinvent the wheel over and over again. They can reuse and replicate the success they had and proven successful solutions. So to get there, the problem is measurability. How do you know which solution is successful or not? Big problem. Not easy problem to solve. So last year, September, White House announced a Smart Cities Initiative. It was about $160 million federal funding scattered around in many different agencies, and also many programs targeting on smart city projects. As a part of that, NIST named as Global City Teams Challenge Program, which actually existed for a couple of years even before this announcement. And also National Science Foundation committed about $40 million of funding for smart city projects. And in addition, there are other like DHS, DOT, they all committed funding. So to address this issue, Global City Teams Challenge is targeting and aiming to establish and demonstrate replicable, scalable, and sustainable model for collaborative incubation. Now, remember these three words: replicable, scalable, and sustainable. Here's why. Replicability. We are not interested in building a solution that works only in one city. Okay, we are trying to build a solution that works in 70% of the cities in the United States. Okay, that can create the economies of scale. We want scalable solution. Everything has to come from the lab, but we do not want to stop there. We want that to be deployed and then prove that actually it can be actually address the issues. Third, probably the most important point is sustainability. Now, I'm not talking about sustainability in terms of energy, okay? I'm talking, well, because when you talk about sustainability, a lot of people say, oh, you're talking about net zero energy thing, and yes, it is a sustainability. However, sustainability of the operation, okay? A lot of the smart city projects are one-off projects, meaning that they get funding, like 2 years, 3 years, whatever, and then they deploy stuff and they prove that it works. But what happens after that? Okay? Many projects that is deployed does not go to the city operation very easily, because city managers say, well, I mean, that's a cool project, but I have to pay millions of dollars more for the next 5 years to just keep it running, right? And that's a very tough discussion. And because that happened because when they started these projects, they didn't really think about think about the operational business model, okay? So there are two ways that you have to address. Either the project has to have some kind of business model that can generate its own sustainable revenue, or you can measurably and quantifiably prove and demonstrate that this project is so important that taxpayers' dollars has to be invested on an ongoing basis, okay? So it's one of those two. So you have to think about that from the beginning. And also, we are also come back to measurable benefits. We're going to talk about it a little more later. So how do we do this? I mean, it's easy to say, but how do we actually do this? So instead of each city working with each company one by one, which is traditional model, we want to incubate and catalyze the collaboration among multiple cities, and not just among the US cities, but also global cities. Why? Because whatever solution we develop in the US, if it only works in the US, frankly, that's the only market you're going to get. Only 5% of the world population lives in the United States. Only 5%. That's it. All right? The other 95% lives outside of the United States. So that's a big market. So you want to understand, we meaning that like everyone should understand that collaboration is the catalyst to make this happen, to come up with a replicable, sustainable, and replicable, scalable. Just my own tongue is getting twisted. So instead of making them work one by one, we coalesce them around certain topics like air quality, transportation issue, parking issue. And we encourage multiple cities to work on the same topic together. So by definition, the outcome of this project will be replicable because it was defined by multiple cities from the beginning, not just one single city. Okay? And then it is also sustainable because without sustainability, these cities will not going to invest their own money into making this happen. And we bring in companies from the right side, companies and universities and nonprofits, even government agencies, who can pitch in what we call Lego blocks. Remember, not many companies can afford to or have a capability to provide a full solution of those solutions. Okay, and most of these companies have a bits and pieces like cloud service or, for example, sensors and communication technologies. But when you put them together and try to address the same issue altogether, that's when you can come with a full solution that is replicable and sustainable. So this is the kind of process we go through. I'm not going to go into all the details, but we started back in November 2015, and it's going to culminate, this round we're going to culminate June next year. We are in the middle over there with that thunder sign. The process is pretty simple, actually. We bring in government agencies and nonprofits and companies and cities and academic institutions and put them into the process, and we urge them and we help them to form teams to address certain issues. And then in the end, what we are trying to do is help them to measure and prove the benefits of the solutions they've been working on. And then we help them replicate them in other cities. So why would companies even come to this show? Because they can find more partners and more customers eventually. And then why would cities do this? Because they do not have to reinvent the wheel over and over again. They can leverage each other's investments. So I kind of talked about it already, and these are the kind of reasons why there's different parties to join. Why would academic institution join it? That's an interesting point because research is very interesting, but sometimes it's more exciting to see the research outcome being really deployed in the real world and help the people, That's really comes. For me personally, it was one of the most kind of exciting moments when I see whatever I did in my lab is actually either saving lives or actually helping people or become a real business. That was really exciting for me. So from last year, I mean, this is kind of third year of Global City Teams Challenge, but under the name of Global City Teams Challenge, this is the second year. And over the last couple of years, we had about 160 cities participating. Now, look at the list of cities here. There are large cities such as New York City, San Francisco, but there are also smaller cities like Winooski, Vermont. How many of you heard about the city Winooski, Vermont? Wow, there you go. Because you heard me before, you don't count. Come on.
I'm from New England too. So.
Oh, okay. So you have a little bit of a... that's only 7,000 people. Okay? It's not a big city. It's a small city. But they also do smart city projects. I did not put Arlington here, but don't get me wrong. It's 100 cities, and I just had to randomly pick a small set of cities over here. Also, Amsterdam, Netherlands, Italy, Spain, France, Nigeria, Korea, Japan, they all work on smart city projects. We help them to replicate their success. So these are the list of partners. NIST and US Ignite. US Ignite is a nonprofit, the organization that specializes in developing applications on top of high-speed internet, what they call gigabit internet. We partner with them because they have a lot of contacts in cities already. That's kind of their business. And we also work with many government agencies, NSF, ITA, State Department, DOT, and all that. Also nonprofits, many of them, industry, AT&T, GE, IBM, Intel, and also what is unique about this process is we partner with the central government, foreign central governments, not just the cities. So here's the interesting part. How do you work with the foreign cities? I get that question a lot. I mean, it's understandable to work with the US cities. You can just call them up. But how do you actually work with the foreign cities? So through this try and error process, what we have figured out is, a lot of times, non-US countries, in non-US countries, the relationship between the central government and local governments are not the same as the US. In the US, typically the local governments, central governments, federal governments are not exactly well connected. Well, in a good way, they are independent. In a lot of times, Europeans and Asian governments, local governments work very closely with the central government. So because being a federal government agency ourselves, we work with the central governments in other countries. And then they also help their local governments to work with us. And that's kind of like how it works. Netherlands, Italy, and South Korea, and Japan, those are the countries that we have agreements that they're going to bring in their cities to the mix. And this is not the only countries. This is the countries we officially agreed to do this together. So I'm going to go through only a few projects because of time. But top left, that's actually Virginia. The Southern Virginia is a collaboration of 7 different cities around the Norfolk area. Pretty simple, predict the flooding. How do you predict the flooding, and how can you predict at the street level the rise of the water level? So that you can evacuate people better, you can kind of make the plan in advance. On the top right, that's Montgomery County over here in the, well, not here, it's at the other side of in Maryland, not in Virginia. They have a project called the SCALE. It is an interesting project because it's not a single solution. They create a platform that incorporates emergency response, water management, and elderly care, and even agriculture. So they put these projects under umbrella. Actually, Greg Toth, who is sitting over there, is also working with Montgomery County with this project. He also has his own education project, but he's also participating over there as well. Bottom left is a Link NYC from New York City, as the name implies. This is an interesting project because the city doesn't pay a penny, at least from what I understood. So the way it works is this. There are about 7,000 payphone booths in New York City right now. Payphone booths. How many of you have used payphone for the last couple of weeks? Raise your hands. Last couple of months. Raise your hands. Last year? Oh, okay. So what it tells me is that it's not exactly well used. It's not exactly used very often, all right? But it's still sitting there because that's the infrastructure. So what New York City has done is that they work with a consortium of companies, and they replace this payphone booth with a free Wi-Fi hotspot. It's like 10 feet, it's huge. And they have this, that's what they call a link. That's the name of the big thing. And it has an LCD display, big display, that plays advertisements continuously, provide free Wi-Fi, whoever is in that area, and measure the air quality and measure the noise level. By the way, New York City noise level is a big problem. I mean, they have the 311 call, and one of the biggest complaints on 311 call is the noise. So they say, I cannot sleep. There's something going on in my street, I can't, just stop it. The problem is operators don't even know what they're talking about because they don't know what the source of the noise is. But using this, they can have a map, real-time 24 hours map of the city in terms of noise and air quality. So that's the idea. What is better is that the consortium is a public-private partnership. Consortium gives these things for free to the city, and then they're expecting to generate about $700 million for next 10 years, and they're going to split that profit with the city. So, good thing. And by the way, a lot of cities still have payphone booths unused. Well, I will say it's little used or not often used. An example, on the right bottom, that's Columbus, Ohio. It's autonomous vehicle project working with Ohio State University. Essentially, it's called last mile solution. How to get from A to B faster using autonomous vehicles. There are more projects, obviously. There's the top left is a project in California is another flooding project, and top right is a state of New York. I don't know which city that is. I'm trying to see. It's combating the urban. Yeah, I think it's Albany, including Albany. And bottom left is Cleveland, Ohio, is air quality sensing for asthma patients. Well, basically, if you have a map of air quality, then if you have asthma, when you go out, you can avoid those kind of high air polluted area. Bottom right, that's Washington D.C. It's called the PA 2040. It started as the name PA 2040 came from the district in Pennsylvania Avenue. So PA means Pennsylvania Avenue. So they are trying to replace the street lights of Pennsylvania Avenue. That was kind of high profile project. Top left is Portland. It's an air quality sensing project, and they're trying to use the information to control the traffic flow to minimize the air pollution concentration. That's what they're trying to do. Top right, that's a kind of old slide. It's called Bringing Internal Things Know-How to High School Students. What is the new name, Greg?
The new name is IoT Education and Workforce Development.
All right, thank you for that. You didn't give me the new slide. That's why I still have that. All right. So this is an exciting project. So essentially, Greg came up with this idea to deploy, come with a sensor board with a bunch of different sensors, and then give these sensors to high school students with APIs and programming tools so they can come with exciting ideas, and then they share the result in the cloud. Okay? And then they can download, they can upload the result in real time. So data can be shared both in the monitoring and control. And I believe this map is still old, but one of the high schools is in Maui, Hawaii, and the other one is obviously in here in the Virginia area. And you can see they actually can communicate each other through this IoT development kits. Netherlands, Amsterdam, Eindhoven, Amsterdam. I'm not going to go into this lighting project. It's a smart mobility project. So last week, we had this annual Global City Teams Challenge Expo. We have what we call Expo every year around the summer area to bring in all these teams and audiences together so the teams can show off what they've done for the last 1 year. At the same time, there's an opportunity to recruit more cities to replicate their successful solutions. So this year, we had in Austin, Texas, we had over 90 teams. We had over 120 cities, local governments participating in at least one of those 90 teams. And we had about more than 300 companies, organizations, and universities participating, again, at least one of those 90 teams. 14 countries. We had actually more than 2,000 confirmed attendees. That was a big event, by the way. Federal keynote panel, White House, DHS, DOT, and also Mr. Martin O'Malley was there as well, who was the governor of Maryland. He was a pretty good speaker. I bet he is, right? He has to be. Also, it's important to work with the mayors. Again, when I say mayors, it's not just the mayors. Sometimes county executives, whoever is leading, whoever is in the leadership position of that region or the communities. So we brought in 5 mayors from across the country and one including from Netherlands to hear what they think about the smart cities. So this was last year. The previous slide was this year. This was last year. Last year we had it in the Washington, the Building Museum, the National Building Museum here is a beautiful place. And we turned that place into a massive exhibition hall. It was exciting as well. Top right, the picture that's actually King and Queen of Netherlands. By the way, Netherlands is very, very exciting country. They, up to that level, King and Queen level, they pay attention to smart cities. So I don't know what's the deal over there, but suddenly the buzz over there is a lot louder than buzz over here in the States. Bottom right is Mr. Secretary Fox, Tony Fox from the U.S. Department of Transportation. He also gave a keynote. Oh, by the way, now I'm not sure how many of you are aware of this. DOT, Department of Transportation, issued a $50 million challenge program for smart cities. Some of you are nodding head already, but the point I'm making is federal government is really paying attention to make the cities smarter and smarter. And I believe the winner of the $50 million, oh, by the way, 78 cities applied for that $50 million, and there were 7 finalists. And then out of the 7 finalists, one winner will be announced tomorrow, actually. Although there was a leak out of it, so kind of everybody kind of knows about it. I mean, you smile, you know that. It's all over the news everywhere already. So, but anyway, this is the point I'm making is the federal government is really paying attention to this. Okay, and then the 7 cities are San Francisco, Columbus, Ohio, Austin, Texas, Pittsburgh, Portland, Oregon, Denver. Did I say Columbus? I thought I said Columbus. Was that? No, I forgot the last one. But anyway, you were coughing, right? You were just coughing. So anyway, but the important point is this. I'm really proud to say that the 6 out of those 7 cities have been participating in Global City Teams Challenge, and a lot of the projects they're working on, are related to the projects that was from Global City Teams Challenge. So this is kind of the example that the federal agencies kind of work together. I mean, these are the independent programs. So DOT has their own program, NIST has their own program, NSF their own program. But we kind of like try to create real synergy between these programs. So now that phase 1 is over, we are coming into phase 2 of the GCTC. So phase 2 will focus a lot on the measurements. So why? I already talked about this a little bit. From city's perspective, when a company comes to a city and say, hey, here is a great solution to address your air pollution problem. Okay, so if I were a city official, I would say, okay, what do you mean? I mean, when you say you can improve the air, you can reduce air pollution, how much? Is it 0.5% you are talking about, or is it 30% you are talking about? Without having the real measured result, successful measured quantifiable result, it's very hard for cities to understand what is going to be input, meaning the investment, both in time and money, or what is going to be output. So that mechanism, the measurement of the success is not exactly well understood at this point, although there are a lot of KPIs floating around. For example, air pollution level, traffic jam, commute time, energy usage. The issue here is this. Oh, by the way, this is vertical and proposal. As of April 5th, which was already 2 months ago, this was kind of statistic we had out of this 100 teams we have in Global City Teams Challenge. And this is kind of what the teams are going to measure. Some of them are measuring things like economic benefits, energy usage, and also public safety and all that. But, Now, we are coming down to a little bit of a research discussion. So since this is more academic setting, I want to, oh, you have a question.
On like 2 slides from this,
2 slides.
yes. So they just have to come up with the prototypes by this month, like.
Oh, no. So,
Okay.
Okay. So 2-phase approach. The first phase culminated actually last week. And the goal of last week was come up with a feasibility. So when I say feasibility, that can mean a lot of different things. It can be a prototype, it can be a pilot, or in some cases, just a simulation, for example. Now, next 12 months is when we are encouraging the teams to deploy and measure the impact. And we will recognize those teams who successfully measured the impact and successfully proved they showed they made a tangible impact. When I say tangible impact, this is important. So it doesn't work when someone says, oh, I sort of reduced the traffic jam. What does that sort of mean, right? We really need to see that in numbers, in a measurable scientific way. So it comes down to a little research question right now. There are a lot of KPIs, key performance indicators out there. The problem of those KPIs is most of them are just one-dimensional. Meaning, typically, when you go to like those standard bodies and research papers, they say, here's a list of KPIs we use. It's essentially a table, okay? It's a list of the KPIs and units. The problem is in most of the smart city projects, it's not one-dimensional. The impact typically goes into multiple KPIs. So I will give you an example. If you want to monitor air pollution, and then if you want to redirect the traffic to reduce air pollution concentration, air pollution concentration may be reduced, but its side effect could be that you may create more traffic jam because you are artificially directing traffic in a certain direction. Okay? So most of the smart city project, whatever you do, always have these trade-offs. And then how do you model these trade-offs? Okay? And how do you even choose KPIs? I mean, you may think that KPI number 1 has the most impact, but you may actually, maybe that sensitivity of the KPI that you chose may not be as significant as other KPIs you are not even aware of. So how do you even choose that? And how do you create the relationship modeling between them? How do you prove them? Because the reason is, once you have this model, the cities will be able to say quickly, yeah, that project is making overall impact to my city or not. So that's kind of like, this is kind of like a little bit additional project that we will pursue inside of the Global City Teams Challenge community. Using community-based approach, and we would like to come up with this model and framework about what we call hybrid KPI that can represent the actual impact, the real impact in the cities. That's pretty much it. I spent about, I would say 40 minutes, so it wasn't too bad. I hope, let me give you one joke. Some of you may already heard it. I mean, because I don't want to just leave it this way. 2 years ago, I read an article. It's a very interesting article. And somebody was kind of like arguing why transportation is even part of a smart city. Okay? 2 years ago, transportation is even part of the smart city concerns. So the reason is, at the time, a lot of people thought smart city gonna mean installing new software in the city hall. So in a new city web page, that was kind of like smart city they had in mind in many cases. So the guy who wrote the article was interviewing somebody from transportation area, and he has a very interesting way to put it. Automobile industry has been around more than 100 years, okay? The way the cars has been communicating with each other hasn't changed. There has been only 3 ways to communicate. One is honking, the other one is flickering light, and third one is a middle finger. So by the way, cut this off when you want to kind of put on the, this is not the, so anyway, it's just a joke anyway. But it has a point because the way the cars have communicated have not changed, and we can do better than that, okay? We can do better than that. And that's the point, to get to a safer and more safer world and safer community and improve the quality of life. That's what we are getting at, and that's what we are working on Global City Teams Challenge. Thank you. I can
Thank you, Sakwu. So we have time for some questions. I do want to ask you if you want to ask a question. There's a little vertical bar here, and when you press it, the microphone should light up. And so please speak in the microphone so the folks on the stream can hear the question as well. And also don't run away after the Q&A session's over. We'll still have more reception afterwards at the end. So, all right, take it away. Questions?
My name is Ken Rogers. I am with the National Defense University. My question is, what happens when smart cities also increase risk to citizens? Their data being monitored, either used and leveraged in the wrong hands, or become tools for the government to misuse in ways it was not intended.
Yes, so you are bringing up a very important question of privacy and security issues, which I did not address a lot in my presentation because GCT's goal is not exactly that. However, that's a big risk, and all these projects that are working on GCTC, we are also encouraging them to look at security and privacy issues from day one, because they cannot be just add on to the developed solution. So I don't have a silver bullet to answer your question. Just like any security issues, I mean, there's nothing like 100% security, right? But it's extremely important that the developers and cities, at the beginning of this project, they have to bring in these experts who can address these privacy and security issues and make sure, as much as they can, that these issues are covered and addressed as much as possible.
Yeah, but we do know, like in the automobile industry, a tire sensor with near-field communication, you can hack into that, place a bot onto the computer of the car, which goes into the garage of the house and is resident and can be there for any length of time. So currently, I mean, we spent 20 years building applications, computer applications without security. And for the last 15, we've said, okay, build it in from the beginning. But it seems like with IoT, there's a big push for the convenience of the consumer, the city, and all the benefits it brings, which are innumerable. But if that comes with a hidden risk that the public is not aware of, when they buy into the sharing of information in the open cities and IoT, isn't that creating a risk the public should be aware of?
Well, so I think it creates risk. There's no question about it. I mean, risk is always there. Just like if you buy a PC, there's always a risk that somebody's going to hack into your PC system. So what you do is you give your best shot to make sure that you are putting your best effort to block them and deal with them. So you are correct in the sense that these issues are extremely important issues that has to be discussed. So the analogy I always use this: there's a benefit and there's a risk, okay? And when you develop any product, it doesn't really need to be IoT. Anything, you always have to weigh both. And then if you just put too much effort on one thing, the other thing dies. The other thing is killed, and that's not what you want to see. So you have to kind of like balance them, put them one by one, little by little. So I'm not exactly in favor of just rushing to the end goal, okay? Because if you rush to the end goal too fast, something goes wrong and something's break. Like security issues, if you do not pay enough attention to it. So when you design a product, like you talked about the car and design, and frankly, a lot of the scary stories that you see on the magazine these days were it happened because designers of the system could have spent just a little bit more attention to it. Very simple things, like do not connect your tire pressure sensor to internet, for example. Then that could have prevented this disaster or disaster scenario. I'm not saying that disaster happened. It could have prevented this kind of situation. So, but everybody makes mistakes, and best we can do is identify those mistakes as soon as possible and put our best effort so that these mistakes do not happen again.
Thank you.
Can you speak more about how the teams collaborate over the time period of the phases? Because I'm having a hard time imagining teams from however many countries there were being able to communicate with each other on that level that seems necessary.
Right. So what I did not mention in this slide is there are 2 more annual events in addition to the Expo. Expo is the biggest event. That's really what we bring them and to show the outcome. But there is also 2 what you call tech gems. It's like a hackathon. It's like a tech gem. And that's where we bring these folks in, and we hire professional facilitators to kind of help them to build these teams. And typically that happens here in Gaithersburg, at NIST campus is right over here. So the way it works is a full 2-day session. First day is typically presentations of existing teams. And second day, we put them in breakout sessions. There's a bunch of hackathon type post-its here and there, and we help them to form teams. But you're also right. If it's not easy to have teams across the Pacific Ocean, for example. However, I see this, and this is like 3rd year I'm doing this, and I already see the transatlantic collaboration, trans-Pacific collaboration. So it doesn't happen overnight, but it happens.
Did you have one here? Question?
Dr. Riaz, has NIST taken any positions on whether you favor processing on a sensor or sending the data back to a central location?
Right.
As part of that may address some of the PII issues, the privacy issues.
Sure. So the direct answer to your question is no, we do not take any position because that heavily depends on the application. Some applications is possible to do most of the bulk processing on the edge devices and only send the result. Not all devices or not all applications can live with that scheme. So you are also correct. In certain cases, PII can be handled better in one area over the other. But at the same time, it really comes down to application. So really, there's no one single answer.
Going back to the ability or likelihood of IoT devices being hacked, it seems like the most likely way to have developers take that extra time is to hold the developers liable. And if you look at many of the devices that are out there right now, there is no liability that goes back to the manufacturer a lot of times. It's, if somebody hacks into my phone, it's my fault, or because I didn't use a strong password or something like that. So how do you think in the long term we will have to address the notion of liability with the Internet of Things and smart city applications to protect people? And do you think that it will ever become a issue that the general population will start to demand as opposed to niche organizations?
Okay, so first, security is not, and privacy is not exactly my expertise. We have a different part of the NIST that specialize in that. Its whole division is working on cybersecurity issues. So I can direct those questions to them. My personal perspective, okay, not NIST official, it's my personal perspective is this balance between the security and privacy issues versus innovation is not a new thing. It has existed for a long time, okay? And then frankly, even in IoT, this is not a new issue. We had this discussion, exactly same discussion 10 years ago when it started working on Zigbee and Z-Wave devices, okay? So what is the difference today? The difference is more people now know what IoT is, and more people start thinking about what the impact is. And proportionally, more engineers are working on security and privacy issues today, as of today. So my personal perspective is it will grow together, meaning that the security concerns and privacy concerns and expertise, we're going to grow together with the innovation. And there will be some isolated cases that you will see some of the devices may, examples like car, for example, Wired magazine that says it's hacked and all that. But eventually, I think it's going to go to the point that it's not completely addressed, but is adequately addressed for our everyday life. Again, when I say adequate, it doesn't mean that it's going to be complete. For example, PC, is it perfect in terms of cybersecurity? No. But we use it still every day because the benefit of using a PC outweighs the risk of not using a PC. And I think we're going to probably get to that kind of situation.
I would comment, though, that the difference between that analogy and cyber physical systems is there's much more risk. I mean, here you could lose your data, you could have your private information released, but a physical system, there's the risk of car crashes or other more fatality type.
Because of that, we have to put more effort and time and energy in making sure. We probably have to put multiple times more effort in cyber physical system in terms of security and privacy issues.
Let's take one more. Is that okay? Go ahead.
So this is really cool, and it seems
Thank
really
you.
exciting.
I thought it was cool.
Yeah, and I kind of want to get away from the scary part of it, but so in your opinion, doesn't necessarily have to be NIST's opinion, in your opinion, what's the coolest or the most useful or the project with the most potential that's coming out of this that you've seen so far?
That's an interesting question because virtually every project in this Global City Team Challenge is exciting for me.
It's obviously the one Virginia Tech is involved in with Greg.
I think so. With the one that Virginia Tech is involved in his project as well. So like vehicles, autonomous vehicles are a lot of times interesting. Also saving lives. I mean, robots and, the connecting robots and working with the firefighters together, that's also exciting. Education, again, this is not because the Virginia Tech is involved. It's because it is exciting. Because think about it. I always say this. I started working on computer when I first saw the Apple II. It was like, I think it was 1980 something, and it was like that small machine. It was so fascinating, and I worked on it. And then that's what got me here today, all right? So in 20, 30 years from now, it's not going to be me. Well, it may be, but it's not going to be me who's going to design IoT system and smart system at that point. It's going to be the middle school, elementary school students as of today who's going to be doing that. So at the time, I was able to play with Apple II, and that's what got me into this field. What's going to be today's education? Which part of today's education we're going to attract those kids or whoever is there to become the IoT and the smart city engineer in 20 years from now? So that's why I think this IoT training and education is an extremely important part. I think frankly, it's underserved at this point, but it will be more and more. It will come more and more. Whenever I see that high school kids working on it, I just get thrilled.
All right, I think we're gonna close it off there. Please join me in thanking Sakuri one more time.
Thank you.
We do have a small parting gift for you. It's of
sure.
nominal value that will be below the $25 limit.
So you already know all this. Okay. All right. All right. So I will take a look at it.
We won't tell if you don't.
Well, there's already camera over there. So what are you talking about?
Less than $25.
All right.
So please join us for a little bit more networking and reception time. I'm sure there was other folks that had questions that maybe didn't get to ask them. Please join us out at the reception and take a moment to say hi to Dr. Rhee and maybe ask any additional questions you might have. And thank you so much for joining us, and see you in the fall. Thank you again.
Good.